Welcome to API Conversations. When I joined the direct mail API first company Lob, we were moving from hand maintained API reference docs to auto generating them from an open API definition. Now, we stored this API definition on GitHub, and we had this nice CI CD workflow to validate, lint, and contract test before building and deploying our documentation. But the tool that we chose only built our API reference. And when it came time to crafting getting started and use case guides, we ended up authoring in a separate content management system, which resulted in a fragmented workflow and honestly poor collaboration. I wish I'd known about today's topic, which is Docs as Code. I'm joined by Sohaib, product manager at APIMatic today, here to share how Docs as Code can support better workflows for writers and contributors. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Sid. It's good to be back.
Why don't you kick us off by just telling us
Okay,
what Docs as Code is?
sure. So I've got a little presentation for you today, but let's keep it interactive. So I'm going to start us off with looking at what's inside an API portal. So there's two core components to an API portal. So one, it's the content in the portal. So it's the documentation, the code samples, any guides that you want to write. And then second is the infrastructure. So since this is a website that you're hosting, so you want to figure out where you want to host it. You want to figure out your CI/CD pipeline and stuff like that. So let's go deeper into each of those components. So let's start with content. So the components of an API portal. So bare minimum, you're going to need a quick start guide, right? Something to explain to your developers how to get started with your API. Then you want to give them an API reference, sorry, and then technical documentation, for example, change logs, maybe FAQs, walkthroughs, or tutorials. So that is what you're looking at in terms of what your bare minimum, at a bare minimum, your API portal contains. So this is what I'm looking at right now in terms of the team that is just managing your content, and it's a pretty sizable team so far. Did I miss anyone, Sid?
No, I don't think you've missed any. You've covered all the bases, and I really think depending on the size of the company, you might have one person wearing multiple hats, or you might have multiple people wearing similar hats, like multiple developers or multiple technical writers.
Got it. Yeah. So with that, let's move on to infrastructure and see what kind of team members we're going to need to contribute to that part of the API portal. So an API portal is essentially just a website, right? So you need someone to design it, develop it, deploy it. Can you guess it? What team members we would need here?
Yeah, from my experience, we usually have someone doing the user experience, like a UX designer. We need some front end engineers, versed in the latest frameworks, and probably some back end folks to integrate with existing systems. That's what I've typically seen.
Yeah, I think you've got that spot on. So you need some UI UX designers to build out the user interface to make sure your API portal is following the brand guidelines of the organization. You need some developers to actually build the API portal. And then you need a DevOps team or an IT team to
Mm.
manage the deployments, your CI pipeline, to manage your hosting, and so on. So putting all of those people together, this is what we're looking at in terms of the team that will be looking after your API portal. Now, how do all of these people collaborate effectively? So that is the problem that we're trying to address in this conversation today. And it's it shouldn't really be a problem. So if you think about it, these people are already collaborating to build the actual API. So why should it be a problem when these same people need to contribute together to build an API portal? So it seems like a simple problem to solve, but when you look around you at the types of tooling that organizations are using to build out their API portals, you'll see a lot of variations. So you'll see some organizations who went with some sort of a managed solution with a CMS for managing all of the content. You maybe I'm seeing a lot of Drupal sites these days, and on the other hand, you have people building these custom solutions for their APIs. So just curious, Sid, what kind of tooling and approaches have you seen recently?
Yeah, well, I've seen a variety because I've been around a while. I've seen documentation built with WordPress. I've seen custom built sites. And I've seen sites built with headless CMSs or static site generators. There's really a lot of choices out there, and it's finding that right one for your team to help them, be effective and collaborative.
When you look at it, there's these different approaches, and they all have their own benefits and their own drawbacks. So when you're looking to striking a balance between the convenience of building out this infrastructure and maintaining your content, and also to provide a good experience to your developers who you're building all of this for, I think Docs as Code uh, strikes a pretty good balance in that sense. And what I mean by docs as code is this essentially. So docs as code is an approach where you're maintaining your documentation as plain text files, and then you have some sort of a static site generator tool to take all of those files and generate an API portal for you. And then you're using maybe a version control system such as Git, or on top of that, you're collaborating by creating pull requests, and then you've got CI/CD in the mix as well. So you're able to automate deployments to your API portal. So that is what you're looking at in terms of a typical docs as code approach to managing API portals. Do you have any questions so far?
Yeah. So I assume when you say plain text files, something that technical writers are familiar with is Markdown files. So that is a kind of plain text file they might include. But I'm really curious when you get all these different contributors that you talked about at the beginning, from engineers to technical writers and everything in between. You might even have, like I said, multiple tech writers. How do you manage these simultaneous contributions without people stepping on each other's toes?
Yeah. So to address your initial question, yes, I was referring to Markdown files, and from a technical writer's perspective, and then from a developer's perspective, you can think of JSON files, YAML files. So that is what you're going to use to compose your documentation site. Now, coming to how the collaboration aspect of it works, that is actually what I was going to talk about next anyways. So that's the version control aspect and the audit logging aspect. So every change you're making, since it's being tracked by Git, so you can attribute every change to a person. So you know when a change was made, who made it, and why they made it. And you also have the ability to roll back individual changes. So you've got all of the goodness of Git that we've come to expect of any software uh, uh, production process. So we're bringing that same convenience and that same ease of use to your documentation process as well. And speaking about what benefits you're going to get out of Talk, so of course there is the collaborative aspect of it, but then since you don't have to teach your team any new tools, they can just continue to use whatever tools they've been using before. So that means your developers can continue to use VS Code or Sublime Text, for example. Your technical writers can use their favorite Markdown editor. Your DevOps team can use whatever CI/CD tooling they want to build out the automation process. So you don't have to compromise on the experience of the people who are building your API portal. And then finally, you also have automated deployments, as we mentioned, CI/CD. So anybody that wants to deploy your portal, whether that is a technical writer or a DevRel team member, they don't have to depend on anyone to make that deployment for them. you can set up an automated workflow for CI/CD, and that takes care of deploying your changes to production. So essentially, that is the value proposition that we are looking at in terms of Toxis code. Now, I have a demonstration for you. So I'm going to show you how all of this comes together to actually build an API portal. So I'm starting with a basic GitHub repository. I've cloned a starter project from APIMatic for the docs as code workflow. It follows a certain directory structure. So you've got essentially separate folders for managing content, which is your Markdown files. You have a separate folder for your API definitions, and then for your configurations as well. Now I've got 3 pull requests open against this portal. So I'm going to show you what this portal currently looks like, and then we're going to see what it ends up looking like after we go through and we merge all of those pull requests. So it's a pretty bare bones portal. We've got a green theme. We've got a basic guide page. We've got a very small API definition. It's actually just one endpoint. So this is what it's looking like right now. So let's go into each of the individual pull requests that we've got open. So starting with, let's look at the spec updates. So presumably the dev team has made some API definition changes to this portal. They've added some new API files. So we can go into files change. We can take a look at what files have changed exactly. And since we've got CI/CD set up, I can actually go into GitHub Actions. I can look through the build logs, and we also have branch deploys set up. So I can actually go in, look at the deployed API portal, and see what changes exactly have occurred due to this API definition being added. So this is our branch for this particular pull request. So we can preview it. We can see exactly what it's going to look like after I merge this pull request. So you can see we only had this calculator endpoint previously. We now have the pet store API imported here as well. So you see all of those endpoints. So I can then go back once I'm satisfied with what I'm looking at. I can go back. I can go into the pull requests once again and actually merge that pull request. Okay. So I'm going to go in and merge this pull request right now. And then we can move on to the next one. So we've got another pull request open here that is going to make some design changes to our API portal. So presumably this is coming from our design team. They've been working independently. They've discussed what design changes they want to make, and they've gone with the addition of a fav icon to our site, and they've changed the primary color of the portal from green to blue. So I can review that pull request. If I'm satisfied with it, I can go ahead and merge it. Similar to how I showed you, you also have branch deploys for this pull request. I can go in and look at the change if I wanted to, but I'm just going to go ahead and merge this one as well. Finally, the last pull request is a content update. For this content update, a guide page has been added by our technical writing team, our DevRel team, or let's say a product owner. So they want to add some additional documentation. So they've created a Markdown page here, and they've added it to our portal. So again, if I'm happy with what's in this site, I can actually since I've got branch deploys, I can go in, I can see exactly what the change is and what the portal will look like after I merge this pull request. So I'm going to go back just to speed things up. I'm going to go and squash and merge this pull request as well. Okay, so now we've merged all of our pull requests. It's going to take a bit of time to deploy all of these to our public website. But once it does, I'm going to maybe do a hard refresh here and see if those changes are being reflected in my portal right now. Okay, there we go. So all of our changes have been deployed to our website. So we see the new guide page that our technical writing team added. We see the new color scheme. So it's changed from green to blue. And we see all of the API definition file changes that our dev team had made. So with all of those changes live, uh, on our side, we're pretty much done. So we've just demonstrated how uh, three different product teams were able to collaborate to deploy their own changes independently without any interdependence, but also while being able to track each individual change, preview each individual change, and see what it would look like exactly after it was deployed. And that is the power that you get out of using a docs as code approach to managing your documentation.